Welcome to Pilar's Pillars, your audio and video access to interviews, communication techniques, insights, and information that will help you speak more and speak better. Now here's your host, Pilar Ortiz.
Today we are going to talk about education among the Latino population in the United States. We can go from here to here and everything in between, right?
Oh, yeah. Historically, we can start with the history. There's always been a long struggle in our Latino community trying to gain educational equality. For long, we look at, particularly in the Southwest, in places like Texas, for example, where there were the Mexican schools, just like there were the Black schools, where Blacks were only allowed to go into those schools, whites into others. There was also that history here in Texas. Very low expectations for that the white population and the government had for the Latino population. So those have been the struggles that trying to desegregate schools and so forth, give better opportunities. And I think that those continue to be the major challenges. And we know the Brown decision in 1954 that was created to desegregate schools, to integrate schools so that African-American, Latino children had better and more equal opportunities. But we are now, I think one of the major challenges is we're now at a time when the segregation that we find in our schools is greater than it was at the time of the Brown decision. So we see that, that despite the efforts to desegregate, that we continue to see schools where white kids go with other white children, Latino children go to schools where there's Latinos and African Americans and so forth. So it's greater degrees of segregation, and those impact, of course, the level of readiness, for example, of going to college and so forth, because for many of these schools that are predominantly Latino, African Americans, they have poor funding, less educational resources and so forth, which really impact. So those, I think, continue to be the major challenges. There are good things that are going on in the Latino population when it comes to education, so that for long we have had the lowest levels of education as a group, as an entire group, the Latino population. But in the last 5 years or so, we're beginning to see some buds of hope that are taking place. For one, we see, for example, Latinos now represent the largest minority group in higher education. In colleges and universities, we're now the largest group. You would have asked me that 25 years ago, I would say this is going to be hard, but we're seeing that taking place. But we also have, despite our presence in higher education, we tend to also be concentrated in community colleges. So that's very important because it provides that connection to entering college and university, gaining a college diploma. But for many, they may remain in that particular 2-year getting the associate degrees without getting the 4-year education. So one of the primary challenges is trying to make the connections between community colleges and 4-year institutions, so that there is an easy way that people can transition from the 2-year community colleges to the 4-year community colleges.
What about the population that are coming? Like now it's a different type of people that were educated in their countries. I remember in Colombia, it wasn't a matter of, are you going to the university? Which university are you going? What are you going to study? So that difference of the people that are coming and migrating to the United States, that level of education that they are bringing to the place.
Yeah, so you see some of those changes that have taken place in immigration, and increasingly, I'd say over the last 20, 25 years, the level of education of immigrants coming to the United States has increased, and we see it even in the case of Mexicans, for example, Mexican immigrants coming to the United States the last 8-10 years. And that has to do also with the violence that has taken place in Mexico, so that people that are at risk of being sequestered or so forth. More of those with resources, with more education, are coming to the United States. So they're also impacting positively the level of education. And so that more people are coming with those expectations that their kids are going to go to colleges and universities. And something that is also very important is that even for children that come from low socioeconomic backgrounds, that are immigrants, Mexicans and others from the Latino community, they tend to do pretty well in the school system. And there's been all that there's been first generation, second generation, third generation increases, but by the time you're talking about fourth generation, it starts decreasing. And people have been trying to unravel, why is it that kids that are immigrants themselves or their children of immigrants are doing so well in school? And one of the theories that has been put forth is the optimism that the immigrants bring to the United States. So kids see the struggles that their parents made coming to the United States, las ganas that they bring,
Échale ganas, sí se puede.
the desire that they bring to better themselves, and that is passed on. That optimism that is passed on to their children, and their children tend to do better in school. They see that in many cases where they come from, the countries that they come from, maybe they didn't have those opportunities, and they see this as their chance. And seeing the efforts that their parents made to bring them here to the United States. And you talk to parents that say, I didn't do it for me, but I did it for my kids.
And that optimism, they learn it, they see it, they feel it, and they respond to it. Wow.
Yeah. So that's something that is very important that we see in the Latino community, and it's again fights those stereotypes that people have about immigrants. That there's all these negative things that are going on. There's a lot of very positive things that immigrants bring, including that ganas and that desire that they bring to this
Thank you
country.
very much. We will see you next week. Thanks.